control the vertigo.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthology with your host Mark. Today we're covering an episode of The Night Gallery. It first aired on March the 4th, 1973. It's the 12th episode of season 3, and it's actually, in terms of number of stories told within this entire series, it's the 92nd story. This one was written, it's called Death on a Barge. It's written by Halstead Wells and directed by Leonard Nimoy, who was like an aspiring director at this point. He went on to direct fairly successfully both in the Star Trek movie franchise and in other works. Three Men and a Baby, for example, is one of his. And it's kind of interesting to see what he's doing here. There was a number of constraints around this, what was needed in this, and he came up with some interesting work. Stars Leslie Ann Warren, who's really well casted. It's a brilliant piece of casting. Lou Antonio, who's a fairly familiar face from early 70s TV, and a few other actors that didn't deliver quite as well. It's based on a short story called The Canal by Everett Worrell. And I believe this might be Leonard Nimoy's directing debut. So there you go. Now, the constraint I was kind of hinting at, suggesting was, this is really a story set at night. Pretty much almost all the scenes are at night. However, they couldn't do night shooting. The budget would not allow it. So there was a lot of day for night. Now, Nimoy seemed to know what he was had to do to try and work around this. He does talk about how he always has to have the sun sort of not directly onto the actors, so it has to be kind of behind them, and he has to sort of shoot around that. So he's kind of aware of those issues. And you know what? There's some really interesting shots in this based on, it gives it an ethereal feel, because it kind of looks sort of, sometimes you're watching stuff through a gauze or through a haze, and I kind of like that. But there are a few shots which are truly horrendous day for night shots, but that's the nature of day for night shots. It never works. I don't know why people do it other than budgetary reasons, but there you go. Now, essentially, a fishmonger is kind of attracted to this woman who's kind of stuck on a barge, which is slightly out from the canal. There's there's water between the barge and the dockside. And he's kind of drawn to it. Now, Leslie Ann Warren, you can kind of see this, because Leslie Ann Warren is both beautiful and kind of weirdly waifish, but so attractive. The poses she strikes on the deck of this ship at night is quite alluring. And you can kind of see why. The shortfall is that the main actor that who's attracted to her, the main character, Ron, is not the most appropriate casting stroke actor for this. He's a bit of a blank slate, frankly. The actor's name was Robert Pratt. However, Lou Antonio does quite a better job. If they'd have swapped it, this might have been better, because Lou Antonio is a much more interesting actor. He is a slightly older one, and it kind of, the youth of Ron works in his favour, because it's kind of desperate lovers kind of situation, Romeo and Juliet kind of situation. But this one is a vampire story. Now, interestingly, pretty much all the other vampire stories we've encountered in the Night Gallery tend to be kind of silly. These little short ones tacked on the end of episodes, played for a cheap laugh usually. You know, Dracula going to the blood bank, someone mistakenly thinking they were going to meet a vampire, but actually the person taking them to it is the vampire. Things like that, right? But whereas this is a much more serious take. Actually, a pretty solid story and episode, and actually I quite like the direction, notwithstanding there's a couple of very poor day for night shots. I think it was effective. I think Nimoy did a good job. I really quite liked what was going on, and as I say, Leslie Ann Warren really made this work. And the thing is, she's a vampire. She cannot cross running water, which is why she's stuck on this barge. And there's this whole dynamic of her father stays awake during the day, she's awake at night while her father sleeps, but the father's kind of guarding her. This Ron has a fiance or a girlfriend who kind of looks into it and finds that they lived in another place where there was some mysterious deaths. And in fact, she gets on the boat and kind of gets almost attacked by Leslie Ann Warren's character, who is called Hyacinth. Climbed ran out of a coffin. She's clearly a vampire, right? But Ron won't have any of this. Ron actually goes to sleep 7 p.m, and gets up midnight and spends the rest of the night up, presumably talking to Hyacinth across the water. And Hyacinth really does develop a thing for him, even so much so she doesn't want him to come near in case she bites her. But she does also talk about the fact she's starving because she hasn't fed for a year, which coincides with them being in another place and dead bodies being found. And she doesn't want him to become like her. She's desperate. Now, this is the bit hard to tell because it's really hard to see what her attraction to Ron is. Ron's attraction to her is kind of obvious. She is beautiful and really quite fetching in this role. But Jake does tag along as well, and we actually see Jake go onto the boat with her and obviously become her victim. And then his body's found, which kind of then precipitates things. In the end, Ron goes, and I'm going to spoil this. We could do it. In the end, Ron goes and kind of is forlorn, and she's saying, "No, if you come near, you'll kill me." And then in the end, she's so desperate. She says, "Look, I can't go on like this. I want you to kill me. My father's got a wooden stake in somewhere. Just kill me." Ron can't do it. And she won't bite him, or she's trying to resist it. But in the end, after everything, when his buddy Jake has had the bite put on him, he does go to stake her, and he just can't do it. But just then, the father bursts in. You think there's going to be a tussle between them, but no, it's the other way around. The father actually does drive the stake into her, and we also then see her turn into a skeleton. With a stake for her. Or we see the after effects of that, let's put it that way. This is a fairly cheap show, so we're not going to get too many mad at special effects, especially at this latter end where they're probably not getting much of a budget to do this. And it kind of just winds up. I like the story. I like quite a lot of the direction. I thought Leslie Ann Warren was great. Absolute great in this. And Lou Antonio's pretty good, but he always delivers, I think. I haven't seen him in many things, but he's got charisma and is kind of interesting and worth, watchable. But so there was a slightly unfortunate casting around this one, which kind of a bit of a pull on it. But Leonard Nimoy delivers, and I quite enjoyed it. It's quite a good one for late stage Night Gallery. It might be the best one we're going to see until the end now. I don't know. We've got a few more, 3 or 4 more, I think, to watch before we get to the end. So, yeah, interesting one, and I liked it quite a bit. Okay, I am going to stop there. But before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
There's nobody here but us chickens.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to